Bruce Costall. I was born April 23rd, 1944. I was born in the old Fort William hospital because they didn't have a hospital around here at that time, so Mum had to go to Thunder Bay, and now Thunder Bay, and that's where I was born. Both sets of my grandparents were born in England. One set of grandparents I never got to really meet on my dad's side because he came over here as a child when he was about 9 years old, and on my mother's side I only knew my grandpa on that side because my grandmother died the year before I was born. My wife Maureen and I were married on October the 9th, 1965. You know the old song, I found my thrill on Blueberry Hill? Well, mine was Walker's Lake Hill. Yeah, Maureen and I both were, at that time, we had our summer cottage up at Walker's Lake, and Maureen was living up there with her parents, and of course she used to travel out on the highway just at convenient times when I used to be driving down to town, and she happened to get a ride most days, and sort of took off from there, and we got to know each other there, and then we used to have the Teen Town dances, and Maureen was a good polka, and I needed a partner to polka with, so yeah, that's basically where it started from there. Got to know each other quite well. We have three children. We've got Joan, she's in Thompson, Manitoba. Stephen, he's in Bendigo, Australia. And we have a third son, Bruce, who's deceased now. And yeah, we have four grandchildren from our daughter up in Thompson, Manitoba. They were all born in Australia because they were over there with us at the time, so 4 children were born there. And our son Stephen, he has 2 children again in Australia. So yeah, we've got the 6 of them, and they're all young adults now. It's great. Oh, I've got a varied history there of occupations. When Maureen and I were first married, I went to university in Thunder Bay and wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was at university and the wheels were spinning. I learned how to play a good game of bridge and drink a bit of beer, and Maureen became pregnant with our first child. And anyway, because I wasn't knowing what I wanted to do at university, we decided that I had an opportunity to go out to Crofton, BC, and work in the pulp mill out there. So we left in April and went out there, and we were out there for about 2.5 years. And one day I came home and said to Maureen, I think I'd like to be a school teacher. And she says, of course, where did that come from? And the whole story began. But anyway, I applied to Lakehead University and was accepted there, but because we had a dog and a child at that time, nobody wanted to rent us an apartment. So anyway, Maureen had an uncle who was in or just out of Ottawa at that time, and Maureen had an aunt that was there. So anyway, Maureen's uncle got me into Ottawa Teachers College at that time, and we looked after Maureen's aunt in Carleton Place. So anyway, we come back from there, and just how things have changed, I have to tell you this. When I was interviewed for jobs after we graduated, I was hired by the Manitowoc Catholic School Board. And anyway, I was quite excited about that. And a couple of days after the interview, the phone rang, and it was one of the nuns on the phone, and she said, I forgot to ask you in the interview, she said, "Are you Catholic?" I says, "No, I'm not." She says, "Well, I'm sorry, we have to withdraw your job offer." So anyway, I was a little bit disappointed with that, but within a couple of days, I got a job offer from the public school in Terrace Bay, Don Briscoe. So I taught Terrace Bay for 5 years at the public school there. And then one day, Maureen and I and a couple of the children were up in Thunder Bay and at the dentist. And Maureen took the kids in, and I had a bit of time to kill. So anyway, I was driving around. And I went to see this fellow at Texaco, Canada, just to see if they had any bulk fuel distribution businesses up for grabs, or just to keep me in mind. anyway, I went to Hamilton on a school excursion in June, and anyway, while I was away, this fellow phoned and asked Maureen if Bruce was home. And she says, no, he's down in Hamilton. Is there a message? And the fellow said to Maureen, well, gee, I'd just like to let you know that Bruce has been successful. We've found a bulk fuel depot for him in Nippigan. Maureen, of course, had a few words for me when we got home over that one. How come, you know? But anyway, so we went to Nippigan. We were only there about 14, 15 months, I guess. And our auditor came in and he said, gee, you know, you people are really doing a great job here. He says, we've got a bigger distribution network coming up in Swan River, Manitoba. What do you feel of, you know, about going there? So anyway, we go out there and have a look around, and we both decide that, you know, we could enjoy it out there. It'd be a good place for the kids to grow up. And so anyway, off to Swan River, Manitoba we go, kids in tow and fuel trucks and whatnot. We were up there for 7.5 years, and we really enjoyed it. It was quite an adventure. I always enjoyed the farming communities and whatnot, so it wasn't a hardship living there. But then Maureen's dad, at that time, he was the medical health officer working with the BC government, and he happened to be in Williams Lake, BC, and happened to notice in the paper that there was another bulk fuel distributorship up for grabs out there. So we phoned Maureen and said, gee, what do you think about this? So anyway, away we go and have a look at that. And we were there 5 years, 4.5 years, I guess. We left in 1985, or we sold out in 1985, and anyway, the next thing is Maureen says, well, what next? So anyway, Australia came up because of these fellows that I met when we were working out in BC, and anyway, we went down there for a couple of year working holiday, and anyway, we got into the country down there. I was teaching at the high school down there, and did that for 5 years. And anyway, one day just before school was going back in, the phone rang and a fellow said to me, Bruce, would you like to come out for lunch? He says, I've got a fellow here that'd like to meet you. So anyway, off I go for lunch with this fellow, and anyway, to make a long story short, I ended up back in the fuel distribution business. This fellow had bought a big area of distributorships from Shell, and he needed somebody to manage it. So anyway, we went back into the business, and yeah, in the fuel business for another 13 years. And then Shell bought out this fellow that I was working for. They were taking over all the business again, and I worked for Shell for about 4 months, and that was all I could take. I was spoiled. I enjoyed working for myself or working with this fellow. He let me work as though the business was mine, you know. It was really great. And anyway, I decided, well, I've had enough of Shell, and within a matter of a few hours, the phone was ringing. There was people wanted me to go back teaching high school. So anyway, we did that for a number of years, nothing steady, because at this stage, Maureen and I had opened up an old wares and antique business, and between that, and it was quite time consuming, and then Maureen's mum was sick a fair bit, and you know, it was, and my mum was getting sick, and so we were coming back and forth to Canada a lot more than what we had done, and yeah, it took up most of our time. So anyway, I never really went back to work full time after that. I was just busy puttering around with our own business, and you know, traveling back and forth looking after the parents. And but I still do supply teaching here in town, and yeah, so just keeping busy. The initial reaction was, "I'm sorry, could you repeat that question, sir?" Yeah, it was quite different, but after a while they got used to my accent, and the kids were really great. They were always interested in stories from Canada, because the two countries are similar but yet different, and yeah, no, and the staff that I was working with at that time were terrific too. they really, it was a real experience. They were just terrific people. It was a group of people that you come across maybe only once in a lifetime, you know, because they were all special, and you know, we really hit it off. And Canadians and Australians, like I say, are just so similar. And yeah, we had a lot in common, and shared a lot of good memories for sure. But the kids themselves were great. Of course, at that time, the discipline problems really hadn't started. You know that you know, parents were still, you know, disciplining their own kids at home and things like that. And yeah, it was really quite good. You know, I really enjoyed it. And the other interesting thing, I was just talking to my wife there. We were talking about it this morning about the school year in Australia. Over there, they go 10, 11 weeks, and then they have 2 weeks off. And then they'll go another 10 or 11 weeks and have another 2 weeks off. They do that 3 times, and then they have the Christmas break, which starts, you know, just before Christmas, and then they have all of January off, or most of January off, and then they go back again. And as a teacher, I really found that was great, because the kids weren't super saturated. Like here you have, you know, you go from Christmas time to Easter, and sometimes that's a long haul, and then if Easter's early, you go from Easter till the end of June, and the kids have just about had enough of it. Over there, with the 10 weeks, it seemed to really work out well, and it's something that I think that they should look at really in our system. You know, it worked out well. School over there, like I say, the school year started at usually around the end of January, and then we were out just before Christmas, around the 20th of December. And that was their school year. So yeah, quite different from here, where we go back in September and we get out at the end of June. It's, yeah. But of course they don't have the long winters either to put up with like we do here, and it makes a difference. Yeah. Oh golly, we've always been busy volunteering and helping out wherever we could. Like because we had the 3 kids, our daughter Maureen always helped out with the guiding movement side of it. You know, she always helped there. And with our 2 sons, we were always involved in the Boy Scouts and the ventures, and you know, we always were quite happy to volunteer our time with that. And it was great spending the time with the boys too, and seeing them develop, and it was really enjoyed that. And we belonged to the Kinsman Club. I got involved in that here in Schreiber at an early age, and as we moved around the countryside, it was great meeting different people, you know, because you had an automatic in, because you know all the members always accepted you, you know, and so it was a great place to start with all our moves that we had around the countryside, you know. But I always belonged to that, and of course at that time, when you became 40, you had to get out of the Kinsman Club. That was one of the restrictions. It was a young man's club. And so when I turned 40, of course, you had to resign. But then they had an older club for the past 40s, and we used to get together and whatnot. So we were able to continue on with that. But Kinsman was always, and again, you're volunteering all the time. We had a lot of fun, and we did a lot of good, I like to think, in the communities, you know, fundraising and community work, you know, volunteering, and it was good. And apart from that, you know, we just wherever we could, really. It was always, you know, Schreiber was Schreiber. You're always volunteering, helping out wherever you could. It's always been that way for sure. Yeah. I have lots of memories of Schreiber growing up. It was a great place to grow up. As a kid, I would highly recommend it at that time for anybody. We lived on Ontario Street, and well, the graveyard is where the graveyard is today, but there was always bush in behind there. The highway wasn't through there, so all that was still bush at that time. And I remember I wore out 3 bicycles as a kid, just riding through there, get the spokes in the twigs, and my dad was for everlasting taking them with him when he'd go to Thunder Bay and getting the spokes replaced in the wheels. But I literally wore out, you know, because we were on the bikes all the time, just traveling around. And yeah, a lot of memories. Another thing that is a vivid memory as a young child, 7, 8. You would look at it, and I was always working at that time. My mother would say, "You don't have to go to work, you don't have to do this," you know. But I was delivering milk. In those days, Arpin used to have the dairy. It's over across the street from where the Legion is now. There's not a house there, but they used to have a dairy in there, and they used to have a couple of horses and wagons, and I used to help one of the fellows deliver milk. As I was 7, 8 years old, knew every house in Schreiber, you know, traveling in the snow, and yeah, it was quite an experience growing up. I remember racing down the main street in Schreiber, the two horses, they're racing each other, going down. One was a brown one was a white one. And it was, you know, it could only happen in Schreiber, you know. Yeah, there's lots of memories, really. It's, yeah, the freedom. If I can, like when I was old enough to get a .22, I think I would have probably been 12 or 13. We went down to the States and bought a .22. And in the fall, we'd go hunting. And we used to head off up to the West Pond and whatnot, hunt in the back there, a couple of mates of mine and I, and go back there. But the thing that really amazes me, and I look back and you tell people about it now, is that we would go up there after school. I'd have the .22 in hand, I'd have my shells and whatnot. I'd walk down the main street of Schreiber with my .22, shells in hand and whatnot, and we'd go hunting for however long. We'd come back out of the bush and I'd have a few partridge with me, still have the .22, walk down the main street, and everybody, "Hi Bruce, how are you today? Oh, you had a good shoot today?" And nobody worried about a thing. And you would never ever get away with that today. That's, you know, but that was what it was like, you know, growing up. And yeah, there's a lot of memories, really. You know, just one thing sort of sparks another as you go along. One of the other memories that we have is the old swamp. It was the Blue Lagoon, they used to call it. It was a favorite hangout for all of us as teenagers. We'd go in there. That was our meeting place. Most of us that went to high school would always meet in there. The place was almost always full, and the jukebox was always going, and yeah, we had a lot of great memories in there, and memories of Teen Town when we were growing up. The old town hall, which isn't there anymore, it's where the cenotaph is now. Yeah, we used to make our own fun, really. At that time, we used to have a Teen Town council or executive, and we always planned all our own dances and whatnot. And I would say most weekends there was always a dance, and yeah, it was great fun. We used to police ourselves, you know. Every once in a while we'd get a chaperone to come in just to make things legal and, you know, keep everybody happy. But most of the time it was good. We policed ourselves and looked after things and had a lot of fun. We really did. And, yeah, going to Teen Town conferences and things out of town and meeting other kids, and it was always, yeah, really great. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. We were growing up playing hockey at the arena, the old Schreiber Arena, the tin building. One of a kind again, had an interior second to none with the big wood beams that went across, and yeah, but I had a lot of fun. Played a lot of hockey in the winter time because, of course, winters are so long. And yeah, but we always had a lot of fun playing hockey. We had a super coach at that time, Don Soulier, looked after us when I started at the end of Pee-wees. He took over. He coached us all through bantams and midgets, and we had a lot of success. We played against the Fort William junior teams and whatnot, and we even won a couple of games, but it was a great experience, you know. And Don, personal sacrifice that he gave, I'm emotional now, but yeah, it was great. Yeah, he sometimes put us ahead of his own family, which, you know, you don't think about it at the time, but I do now, you know. And yeah, it was great. Oh golly, yeah. We used to have, a mate of mine used to have an old Vauxhall, and of course there's not many streets in Schreiber, but we'd tour each one of those, I bet you, a dozen times or more a night, just driving around and have the music playing, or most of the time we were just singing, you know, all the old songs that we knew, and yeah, it was great fun. Everybody used to watch for the Vauxhall going by, and everybody waved. And there was always a carload of us. The little thing would only hold maybe 5 people maximum, but there was always 7 or 8 of us in there somehow. Some in the back. It was quite amazing. Oh my gosh. Changes that we've seen in our lifetime are just phenomenal, really. You know, it's I remember as a child growing up, I think I was in grade 7, and our neighbors at that time were the McBrides, Russell McBride, and they had one of the first TVs in Schreiber. And I remember going in there, and they had the World Series was on TV. And before I went back to school, I had to go in and have a look at this TV and watch the ball game. And yeah, it was really quite interesting. Technology in general, like the old telephones that we had as a kid growing up, you know, there were still some of the wall phones, you know, and still had the old dial on them and things like that. And then we got the more modern ones, you know, that you could sit on the table, and that was a real step forward. And but they still had the dial, and yeah, and you take a look at it now, and the kids have got their iPhones and things like that. It's a real big step, you know. And of course, there was no computers or anything like that. When we were growing up, everything was all written by hand. I remember doing all my essays and things like that in longhand. But in looking at it, it was good because we had to learn how to spell. We had to do everything. There was no spell check or anything like that, you know. It was all, you had to be creative and come up with it yourself. But you look at just the schooling system, how that's changed, you know, from when we went to school. We had the old high school and public school were all one building at that time, and then they took the public school off, and the public school became the building that's there today. But that, I think I went in there in grade 8, so I was in the old double building, you know, up until then with the high school attached. Then we went into high school, which was the old building that was there until I guess I came over here in grade 12, when I was in grade 12. So it was there for a couple of years, but yeah, the high school spirit that was there at that time too was something phenomenal too. The old Potestry area, it can be done, you know. But we played hockey and all the school sports, and at that time Schreiber even had a football team for a couple of years with the high school. We used to travel around to the different schools and play football. Yeah, we had a lot of fun doing that. You know, it was yeah. Other changes. I remember Doc Crow's office was over on the south side of town, over by the railway tracks. He just had a little old building over there, and it was quite a place to behold. And anyway, when he moved out, and then the medical office moved over into the main street of Schreiber, just about where used to be a hairdresser shop there, right beside the Pace building. Yeah, just in there. But we used to go in there, and now you see the nice medical centre that they've got at Stokes's medical centre. It's, you know, quite an improvement. Medical care has got better. It has. It's, you know, more modern for sure. Just the town itself, I think, is changed a lot too. You know, that whether it's for the better or not, but when we were younger, you know, everybody worked on the railway almost, and everybody used to walk. There was always somebody on the streets, and unfortunately now, with the automobiles and whatnot, and less people, you can drive down the street a lot of days and not see a soul. You know, you're the only one on the street. And, that was always a big thing with Schreiber, because people were always so friendly everybody knew everybody, and always said hello, and you always stopped and had a bit of a natter, and yeah, it was. We missed that part of it. I mean, my wife and I, we still socialize quite a bit, you know, for a small town, but it's, you know, there's a lot of changes like that. When we're talking about Schreiber, there was always that respect for the older people in society. Like when we were going down the street, you always made it a point that if a person was older than you, they were a Mr. or a Mrs. You always said that. Out of respect for them being, you know, an elder, and everybody appreciated it, you know. Whereas today now, very, very seldom do you ever hear the word Mr. or Mrs. You know, it just doesn't happen the way it used to happen. Yeah. I have quite a few hobbies. Probably I enjoy fishing. And it's nice coming back to Schreiber because there is lots of fishing around here. You've got your Lake Superior, you can go and get your lake trout and go up the mill road and get your pickerel. You can go back north, as we call it. As a kid growing up, we spent a lot of time back on Catherine Lake and whatnot, back behind Cook's Lake. We used to go back there and speckled trout fishing, and even as a kid, I remember one of the things fishing off the Cook's Lake Dam, and we'd catch the small little bass. You know, they were just so much fun, just such a fight in them, you know, for the size of the little fish and whatnot. But yeah, there's always good fishing around here. It's always been a great place for that. And I enjoy carpentry. I really enjoy working with wood and things like that. It's yeah, really. I don't know, it's like a mental therapy, I think, sometimes working with that, yeah. There's always lots of stories about Schreiber. When most of the people here worked on the railway, and most railroaders were characters. Everybody had a nickname, and there was always shenanigans going on. They were playing tricks on each other all the time, and it was like I say, just a great place to grow up and be part of because of everything that was involved. Yeah, there's lots of stories that you could tell, but you know, as a kid growing up, and I was dating my wife at the time. We're talking about teen town dances, and I used to work on the railway as a brakeman or trainman at that time, just on the second spare board while we were going to high school because they needed extra people. And it was quite interesting. You know, you'd be at teen town having a dance and whatnot, and my favorite call girl, as I call her, Lorraine Weaver, always knew if she could find me that I would go to work for her. And lots of times my wife and I would be enjoying the teen town dance, and Lorraine would come, "Bruce, would you mind?" And yeah, you'd go, and you know, just a lot of little stories like that where people were special, and you did a lot of things that you know, for other people. And but I think the stories of Schreiber, you could go on. There's an endless number of them. You know, one thing always brings out another, and you know, we could sit here all night. But it was just, I think the biggest thing is just it was a great place to be. Well, it's interesting when you talk about Schreiber. My wife and I, we've traveled a fair bit, and really, it doesn't matter where you go. If you talk to people either have been to Schreiber, they know where it is, or they know somebody from Schreiber, or they're from Schreiber. And it's just amazing for a small place. Yeah.